wake everybody up, and then people will begin to do some bold things. And they're making alternative plans because they really are looking for some type of unfortunate maneuvers happening within the U.S. Now, it's not going to be a total loss, but it will certainly wake everybody up, and then people will begin to do some bold things. And well, in the end, go ahead.
I agree with you, Mike. There's two nations for sure. I can tell you now, Israel will have to defend its borders, but it has God said he'll build a wall around it, a wall of fire, okay? There's no question they're going to have to, and they will. And I think you're right. The United States, the other nation, a nation founded on the Word of God, and even though there's great divisions in it, and it will cost us, we will take a hit because of it. I'm with you. There's an everlasting truth. There is too much of the gospel here that it will preserve the nation, ultimately, preserve the union because of the gospel here. And I can't help but go back and look at George Washington's vision. He speaks of World War I and II. He speaks of the Great Civil War for sure. He speaks of World War II without question. And he speaks about another war, an end-time war that certainly affects America. But again, the Republic will stand. I think we'll take a hit because we have allowed a lot of idolatry. We have let some wickedness in the culture take a foothold. The Illuminati, the spirit of that Illuminati has certainly been prevalent, but there's something about the fact that the blood of Jesus Christ, there's a remnant here that is so loyal and so strong. I think ultimately it will in the end, but it's going to get very, very, this is going to be a year to really, very prophetic year. Something very prophetic is going to happen.
Most certainly. I know that I'll be devoting quite a bit of time to weather phenomena.
Picture taken from the International Space Station. It shows Cyclone Banzi and lightning in the eye of the storm. An Italian astronaut captured the pictures. She also got this one from a little bit farther away. But man, that is just a beautiful thing to see. Frightening at the same time, but no doubt compelling.
Quite a bit of time to weather phenomena because I know that they're not going to warn people for certain weather events. I would advise people to get some humidifiers. A cheap humidifier would be a very good thing to have because if it gets hot past or where near zero humidity, it's going to be very difficult to breathe. Very difficult to breathe for a lot of people when they have asthmatic conditions and so forth. So. And the temperatures are going to fluctuate. We can actually see snow in the middle of July, followed by a heat wave, of 110 degrees. We're looking at weather phenomena just like that happening, extremes and cold and hot.
Climate chaos, 500 days to climate chaos. That's sometime this September, I believe. And, it's coming close to the beast again, and also the fourth blood moon. There's just a lot going on that I think is going to affect it. Mike, as always, great to have you on the broadcast.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
January 20th, 2015. What officials are calling an apocalyptic freak storm left the United Arab Emirates desert, white, under a blanket of hail. A deadly hailstorm ravaged a Middle Eastern nation, causing infrastructure collapse, nearly 1,000 road smashes, and several dead as a result.
Okay, this is Chapter 3, The Destroyer, Part 1, from the Great Scroll. back in the days of the Exodus. This happened in Egypt, and what they experienced and what you and I, all of us, is going to experience in a much more sinister way than back then. Men forget the days of the destroyer. Only the wise know where it went and when it will return on its appointed hour. It raged across the heavens in the days of wrath, and this was its likeness. It was a billowing cloud of smoke enwrapped in a ruddy glow, not distinguishable in joint or limb. Its mouth was an abyss from which came flame, smoke, and hot cinders. When ages pass, certain laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change, their movements and restlessness. They are no longer constant, and a great light appears redly in the sky. When blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ashes.
On those earthquakes in Texas felt in and around Dallas. Well, tonight, word of yet another one. Now 11 earthquakes in just the last 24 hours. And of course, the new concern over what's causing this. ABC's Clayton Sandell tonight.
When you think earthquake,
Yep,
we're having an earthquake. You think California, Japan, maybe Mexico, but Texas?
Did we just have an earthquake? Yes, ma'am, I believe we did.
In the last 24 hours, nearly a dozen small quakes clustered near the town of Irving, leaving Texas-sized cracks.
It's just like a line just coming through. It's just like it just separated my house.
Rattling the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area.
I want to know what's the cause of it, what's going on.
At the National Earthquake Information Center in Golden, Colorado, they're not ruling anything out. Quake experts say the tremblers could be a rare, natural fluke, but they also say huge amounts of wastewater, a byproduct of oil and gas exploration pumped deep underground, just might be the trigger. That's what scientists believe is happening in the oil and gas boom towns of Oklahoma, now the most active earthquake state in the country. A 4.0 shaker there just today.
Could this be the start of something bigger? The more small earthquakes you have, the more likely it is that you could have a larger damaging quake.
Yeah, you could that's one word for it. Hey, Anthony, I got a question for you. Sure. Dallas, Texas has been having a series of earthquakes. And I'm sure that everybody else is aware of this. What they may not be aware of is we all know that CERN is attempting something that's never been done with a device like that. With the 13 TV they're trying to reach. Beam collision has never been achieved, but no one understands or knows there's another collider in Texas. Dallas, Texas.
And this is not the one that they failed to complete the construction on that you're referring to.
Well, the public story was the facility was shut down because they couldn't complete it. However, China has invested billions of dollars into the collider in Dallas, Texas already. They have also run tests with the collider in Texas.
No way.
And then all of a sudden, Dallas starts having earthquakes and weird things are happening in Dallas, Texas. So now we have another that's likely to offset the experiment in Switzerland.
Yeah. So we're not talking about solely the fracking activities that are taking place that are essentially being blamed for these earthquake swarms. Is that right?
That is right. That is right. I thought everybody may find that interesting, because initially Dallas wanted the largest collider to be placed there, but a highway got in the way of that. I believe it's 77 or something like that. One of those highways got in the way of that. And also, China is going to build one twice the size as the one in Switzerland.
Right. They were talking about building that second one in Switzerland, but I had no idea that the Chinese investing in Texas. Do you think there's any correlation between that and the land grab that's taking place in Nevada?
Well, I do. And you know, this is what everybody needs to understand. The public story for the Hadron Collider is to collide particles at super speeds to determine, this is the public story, to determine or to have more knowledge on how the universe began. You know, Anthony, that has to be the stupidest explanation I've ever heard for such a device. And by the way, the price tag for this thing, I believe, is already up to, it's past, $200 trillion?
Boy, that's a figure I haven't run across, but I'll certainly take it as valid coming from you. Wow.
And it's, you know, it's mounting. Do you guys hear music? I hope you guys don't hear music. I'm looking at the chat room, Anthony. Somebody said something about music, and I'm hoping we don't have... No, we have no music. Okay. Anyway, Anthony, some very interesting things are happening. Now, here's what I do know. These colliders, they have the effect of, they have a magnetic effect. But the worst part is this, those colliders could actually shift our planet. It could really shift our planet. The forces involved in the Hadron Collider, once it reacts, can actually shift the Earth, or certainly crack or cause crustal displacement like we've not seen before.
I agree, and when we spoke last Saturday, we got into the discussion a little bit about the production at the LHC of strangelets.
Right. That is right. And what's so bad is that we're all Christians, and we know that demons are out there. We know that demons attempt to tear away in this dimension. They want to come here so bad by the droves to cause destruction. And every time they power up CERN and get past, I'd say about a 10% level, paranormal activity skyrockets all over the place. And you begin to hear booms, sonic booms. Now, a lot of sonic booms, folks, especially when you don't feel the shock wave, you just hear it. Those are actual entities coming and going in this dimension. That's the way it sounds. It's a large energy transfer with no physical effects, but you can hear it with your ears, but there are no physical effects. And every exorcism, Anthony, that's taken place, the successful ones, they have the entire community. At the time when the spirit left or was ejected, they could hear the sonic booms with no physical effects, but they could hear them. That's when they're being ejected. But when they come in, you feel physical effects.
But without any sound.
Right. You can feel those physical. Some of these earthquakes that we're having, some of these multitude of earthquakes that are very shallow, that they don't really record, that originate from the skies. These are things coming into our plane of existence, our dimension. And we know that the Bible said in this last age, by the way, this is the last age. If you look into the book of Enoch, it talks about this last age, but we know that there will be a deluge or a flood of spirits coming into this realm. Now, this Hadron Collider, I believe, and it's not, I believe things are purposeful, but isn't it funny how they're going to crank up the power, and it just so happens we're in the last days, according to prophecy.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting about that relation? Yeah.
Yeah, the timing is exquisite. Yeah, the threshold we're looking at is 10 tera electron or tetra electron volts, TeV.
Right.
Tetra electron volts are essentially the energy that's given off when the two particles will collide, whether we're talking about protons or what they're going to be using with this new power-up are lead collisions. And the reason for that is they specifically are trying to create strangelets. And when you are talking about strangelets, we're talking about something that acts much like a black hole, although it's not a black hole, but it has similar characteristics in the sense that it attracts other non-stable atoms, which would be basically anything other than strangelet.
Yeah. Which are very dangerous, by the way. And just so the audience knows, a tera electron volt is in fact 1 trillion electron volts. That's what it is, tera trillion. And like Anthony said, of course, the public story, I believe they were trying to reach 6.5 speed to 6.5 trillion electron volts or teravolts. But they're going to supersede that. Anthony, I believe that they know that the equipment will allow them to reach about 13.5 tera electron.
Yeah, 13.5 to 14 using the titanium, their niobium titanium superconducting magnets. And what they're going to do in terms of upgrading to 20, which is equivalent to what they were proposing in Texas that you're referring to, that super collider in Texas was 20 TeV. To achieve that level, they're going to have to change the magnets to 10. It'll be a niobium 10 rather than niobium titanium process, and that will give them on the order of between 5, a magnitude of between 5 and 10 times the amount of power that they can currently produce at the LHC using titanium, which is a maximum of 14 TeV.
Right, right. And don't forget the one in New York. New York also has one. You know what I believe about the one in New York, Anthony, honestly? That facility, because of the infrastructure, and we all know that magnets can induce electricity in wires, there are lots of wire conduits underneath the streets of New York, and they've already had several experiments where these conduits have actually turned red hot that were, you know, a pretty good distance away from the facility. And I do believe that once certain things take place, now this is just my belief, because of the wiring in the city of New York and where that facility is located. And I believe that when that one turns on or is influenced by the other colliders, it can actually cause a melting effect underneath the ground in New York, something they can't really cut off. Magnetism and electrons become highly reactive once they reach a certain point. Anybody who's ever taken you've struck a terminal on your car battery and you saw a spark, and those are minimal amps. Those are minimal amps with minimal volts, but the amperage is what's pushing them out there, which is your electron potential. With CERN, because they are using high frequencies, if the electrons break free, if they have that collision, strangelets are produced. They're going to carry or push electrons so far out into the atmosphere that it could really wreak havoc beyond the control of anybody. It's in my opinion, it's a very unsafe experiment. It has deadly repercussions, and it could really cause some long-term effects that simply cannot be contained.
You know, last Saturday, Jesse brought up the action of induction and an inductive coil essentially generating heat through induction. And that's the picture I'm getting when you describe the cabling running underneath the city of New York. And I agree with you, and sorry to be so oblique here, but it kind of goes back to the movie Ghostbusters.
Yeah, in a sense, a problem underneath the streets of New York. Yeah, you know what? It does. It irritates me big time because I'm a student of electricity, and when you work with engineering products, essentially you're controlling the flow of electrons is what you're doing, and controlling the electromotive force potentials in a circuit. So you're actually controlling and redirecting and doing everything with electrons. Just because there are other elements they don't release to the public. And when you start working on a micro scale like that, or a nano scale like that, particles, if one electron, Anthony, they did find this out. If you affect one proton in one part of the universe, its twin, which could be on the total opposite side of the universe, also reacts. Well, with electrons, they found out something else. Some of the particles inside of electrons have that same characteristic. They have the same period.
It's called quantum entanglement.
And when they are affected, the other electrons can also be affected. If an electron increases its potential outside of its maintained constant, the entire world can see a reaction that is just, you can't undo this, folks. You really can't undo this. A very small reaction can produce very large effects. And it's very, what I would need a slideshow to actually articulate it so people can understand, but the reaction could be hidden violence. And I say hidden violence because with all the scenarios, there's one scenario where it could begin to increase with all the electrons and then affect metals and plastics and everything else that has a molecular structure over the course of about 10 years, and no one would be able to stop it. And then once it reached a critical mass, everything changes on the face of this planet.
Totally agree with you, and as we mentioned last week, we used the term terraforming in relation to strain clips, the effects on the magnetosphere, the magnetopause, the crust of the Earth, the core of the Earth, and the tilt of the Earth, as well as the poles. And, all of that wraps up together. It's a quantum entanglement that you're describing in terms of reaching across dimensions or across the universe, and totally agree with you and everything that you just said. They're not only are they bringing in demonic forces through another dimension, that this essentially will be precipitated by the LHC along with the RHIC in Brookhaven. This is going to create an environment in which those demonic forces can happily live.
Yeah, absolutely. They did that once before. They had a few projects, Anthony, back in a long time ago. And they actually had a device where they could peer into other dimensions. This really centers down this. And let me give a backstory first. That during World War II, Hitler actually recovered some artifacts. Hitler went all over the world, and he began to recover what's called Vimanas. Now, a Vimana, you can read in the Mahabharata, a Vimana was a vehicle that these deities or the rulers of the earth before the flood had used to travel all over the place. A lot of people don't know about that, but Solomon also.
Tuesday, January 20th, about 11:15 Mountain Time, 2015. Coming at you from Southeast Phoenix. Just sharing what I call a sinister sky. Chemtrails are off the hook today. Not sure what's going on, but I haven't seen spraying like this quite a while. It's always in the proximity of the sun. So that tells us it has to have something to do with the sun, more than likely, but maybe not. My guess, it does. Maybe not directly, but maybe our atmosphere needs this. Maybe an atmosphere of any planet, quote, and I use that term loosely, can only take so much solar wind. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to prevent something from happening. Maybe they're trying to cause something. But anyway, guys, like I said, I'm in Southeast Phoenix, and you are looking at a sinister sky. Geoengineering.
The year 2014 now ranks as the hottest since records began in 1880. Scientists at NASA have calculated that temperatures were 0.69 degrees Celsius higher than average. Their research also shows the 10 warmest years all occurred since the year 2000, marking a trend in global warming.
Humans are contributing by burning fossil fuels. We have an increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that is a greenhouse gas because it traps the outgoing long-wave radiation and warms the atmosphere and warms the earth and warms the oceans. What we all hope is that all of the observations which we collect will be interpreted by our leaders, and they will realize that it's important to have a constant climate on the planet. This is very important for our civilization.
It comes as climate negotiators struggle to agree on CO2 emission limits heading into crucial talks in Paris later this year. If warming continues on the current trajectory, scientists predict the world will warm by 4 to 5 degrees Celsius by 2100, a situation they say would be catastrophic.
A lot of people don't know about that, but Solomon also had access to one of these flying machines. King Solomon did, because he went all over the earth. In fact, they have, Solomon made a map of the earth also. I mean, it was very precise, very precise. He had a map. And there were stations all over the earth where these kings would go and visit each other. So it's not like Hollywood, folks, like you see them on a camel and they're dying on the way. No, before the flood, we were dealing with an advanced civilization. I'll give another example. In the Yucatan Peninsula, where the Mayans are, why did they set up their home base right where there's a crater in the Yucatan Peninsula that they say destroyed the dinosaurs? Well, I would say to scientists, they have to go back and they have to read the Book of Enoch to understand that the angels absolutely destroyed the dinosaurs. And I'm getting to a point, but dinosaurs are very important. The dinosaurs cohabitated with mankind post-flood, but they were in fact the animals that were corrupted by the Nephilim. They were the Nephilim, but they were corrupted by the fallen angels. Not only were humans in giant form, but these animals, these terrible lizards, were also in giant form. And just to give another backstory, a lot of the angel classes are reptilian. Now, before you say, what's beautiful and what's ugly, remember, at the throne, there are creatures with 4 heads, eyes all over the place, and they look horrible, right? But they're at the throne. They're at the throne. So the audience needs to, first of all, say what they deem as ugly may not be ugly to the Creator because He created them, right? And so we're the ones who are made in the image and likeness of God, but the angels, we don't know how they look. But there is a serpentine type of class of angel. They're called the Satans. There are 3 other races that are also of that type, which were in fact the Watchers. Now the Watchers, when they made it with people, priests were formed out of these folks who also had the scaly skin and things of that nature. And there's a very interesting story with velociraptors. They were not actually, mindless beasts roaming the planet, but they had speech centers. Remember that the serpent was in the garden, folks. Now, why a serpent? Why a serpentine-looking thing? Why that? It was a race. It was a race, a species who had language. And see, that's very difficult for people to understand. But these things had language. They had language. And so when these fallen angels came and they mated with the birds and the fish and everything else, their offspring carried their traits. When they take physical form, they took physical form. They were reptilian type of form. And what do you have? You have giant lizards. You have flying reptiles. You have swimming reptiles. Everything became a reptile. Anthony, even in human DNA, we share reptilian DNA. The reptile brain is the model for the brain. And largely, our brains are modeled very close to a reptile's brain. Is the model for the brain. And largely, our brains are modeled very close to a reptile's brain in its mechanisms. But we have an additional part which gives us the reasoning abilities and so forth. It's our, one of our brains are overhead and stuff.
You look at our brainstem, that's essentially a reptilian remnant.
That's right. That's right. And so now here's the backstory. Because these things existed, they also had high technology. They've already found libraries pre-flood where they did heart surgery on dinosaurs. Why would you do heart surgery on a dinosaur if it was simply an animal, right? But they had the libraries of how to do this. They showed the tools. Some were quite large. They also taught. They have libraries where people were taught how to communicate with them. How to communicate, because they had very hot tempers. Some of them were, they had hot tempers. And then, of course, there were some you just simply had to stay away from. They were referred to as the lesser dragons, but the greater dragons were huge, and they had the power of speed. Mankind was not the dominant species, but it was the species that was intended to subdue this world, to subdue it. And then everything got out of place. Anthony, also, the Chinese, they keep very good records of everything, and so do the people in Tibet. But they have stone carvings of living dinosaurs with men mounted on them. They have them mounted on them, on the dinosaurs. And they have dinosaurs that these little fictions or pictures of people growing crops specifically for dinosaurs. But the dinosaurs, they showed them picking certain things out of the crops and piling them. Things out of the crops and piling them. I mean, it's so much stuff they hid that, and they're just now discovering, as they dig deeper, they're finding watches and shoes that people wore just like we wear today. So what has happened is mankind, through hiding these stories, they have really depleted of faith in what the Bible says is already real. People normally read the Bible and make it fit their reality, when in fact, the Bible, if you read the Bible, it has its reality, and if we could just read the Bible for what it is, and without preconceived notions, well, then we get a clearer picture. Now, while this stuff may seem strange, I can assure you that if mankind has their wish, all these ancient things are going to be back again. They're going to be back again. If mankind has their wish, they're going to be back again, just like the Bible said they would be back. And in my opinion, it's already beginning. The process is already starting. They may look a little different, but it's already starting. So these are all. Go ahead.
No, just the simple process of cloning that's been around now for almost 20 years, and now there's discussion about taking the supposed blood of Jesus from the Shroud of Turin, and we're well along in chimera, transhumanism, and cloning.
Yes, chimeras are, in fact, Anthony, I believe it was in 2011, the Chimeras wanted to address Congress. Can you believe that? They wanted rights as living species. Yeah. And by the way, chimera, folks, is an animal insect mixed with men, and it was part of a super soldier program. They would raise them, and there was a law they couldn't reach maturity. Well, they retracted that law. They let some reach maturity, and then they wanted rights, like we have rights. They wanted rights. But all these things, you know what, Anthony? All these things are reserved for those who reject Jesus Christ. They rejected him. And when the restrainer is taken away, the restrainer is the one who holds back all this stuff. When the restrainer is taken away, then all these things are going to be released on the earth. And those people who rejected Jesus Christ must begin their punishment. You see, the judgments of God they're not good. Now, I'm glad that it starts with the house of God. Judgment starts with us. Now, we don't get the judgment the world does. Our judgment is to straighten us up so that we can go all the way home. God's desire for us is to make it home. But the world, they're reserved for nothing but torment in the end. Nothing but torment. And, Anthony, I could go into 1,000 stories. I really could. But Hitler started this stuff by digging up all this ancient stuff. He went around the world digging up all this ancient stuff. And so he found it. He found this stuff, and they began to experiment with this ancient technology. Well, all those scientists came to the United States, and then we furthered those experiments. CERN is a very critical experiment to actually find a power source beyond what's physical, to find a power source. But one of the byproducts of finding that power source is being able to open dimensional gateways, just like the Tower of Babel design. And CERN is, in fact, the only way to get that power source is to, in fact, have the power to go into the other dimension. Like these computer systems that are in the quantum field that they use, it's so tiny that they do actually peer into another dimension, storing data and everything else. It's very amazing, but it's very dangerous.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The adiabatic quantum computer, when it retrieves a solution from another dimension after submitting an equation that needs to be processed, you actually are receiving back 10% more energy, and it's very low level, but 10% more energy than you put into that other dimension to run the computation.
Yes, which will, moments when they actually started doing the measurements, but then they got greedy, Anthony. They said, hey, if we can do this with data, which is in fact, they're just pulses of energy, we can also do this on a larger scale, which is why that facility in Australia, they're doing this in Australia. They are producing power out of the other dimensions. They really are. But you know what? The Lord said when he comes back, he's going to destroy those who destroy the earth. And what we're talking about today is how they are, in fact, destroying the earth. They're upsetting the balance that God put in place. And the Lord did say he will destroy those who destroy the earth. He was not talking about people who love trees and the people who don't. But he was talking about those men who are messing with creation. And they're about to open doorways that they just simply can't shut. Now, it's happened on occasion, people being pulled into these other dimensions, and then they come back and their skin is pale, hair is totally white. We're talking a split second. They come back, and they look like they've aged 50 or 60 years, and their hair is totally white, and the people are they're in shock so bad, they never recover. Never, ever recover. Well, that's what happens when people go into the second heavens where all these demons and things are. which is not a good thing to do. And they're attempting to harness the power in that dimension to bring into this world. That's going to come with consequences.
Yeah, what they're tapping into on the science, on the physics side of it, is actually into the dark energy, the dark field and the dark energy that's contained within the field, and that's described as the Higgs field. And that's also, of course, related to, most people have heard of the Higgs boson. But really, we are talking about physically tearing open the Higgs field and tapping into the largest source of energy in the universe, which is dark energy. And as we discussed last week, that makes up more than the physical matter that we experience in our three-dimensional world, and that's only, that's less than 5% of the known universe. So they are quite literally, and in March they're probably going to reach 7 TeV, but in May is when they're going for 13 TeV. So we are talking about stuff that is literally about to happen in our world. And, when we get into discussions like this, people tend to immediately think it's a far off in the future situation that's going to develop. No, this is right in our laps. So going back to your opening statement, this is the last day.
It really is. I mean, it really is. It's incredible that what they've been working on. It's very hard, if you know the facts, to communicate that to anybody, because it sounds ludicrous at best. If a lot of Christians could just simply think of the spiritual realm and understand that if evil is inside of a person, then any of these dark, by the way, you were talking about dark energy, the Higgs field. Hitler found that out a long time ago, and it was called the Black Sun, just to let people know. So it's been around for a long time, and they got all this knowledge from the Tower of Babel. They got the rest from Iraq, and they used the tablets in Tibet for the rest.
The ancient Mayans, men of knowledge, conceived their time on Earth, their cycle of civilization, to be 5,200 years. Beginning their calendar August 12th, 3113 BC, they predicted that on December 24th, 2011, AD, a cataclysmic earthquake would terminate their cycle of civilization. New men of knowledge would then appear to fight the forces of evil and lead the people to create a world government.
Very ancient technology that they're simply recreating. This, when they have a successful experiment, folks, that's when we may see the heavens roll together as a scroll, because they're certainly going to unzip everything. They will unzip everything, and it's going to have consequences to this planet as a whole. The Lord said that the earth is turned upside down. Turned upside down. And it's funny that when you read scripture that the Lord did this and the Lord did that, if they read scripture close enough, some of it he didn't do. He allowed to happen. He always allows mankind to do things that eventually will consume them. In fact, he said they're evil, wicked devices. will be the same evil, wicked devices that consume them. In other words, they're going to hang themselves. They're going to give themselves the doom of their ways. So they did it to themselves, is what it's saying. But a lot of Christians, Anthony, they don't understand the severity of, that's just like I tell them all the time, don't play with your salvation. Because you can't look into people can't look into the other realm and see the angels fighting the multitude of demons that are around you. They can't see that. And when they begin to do these experiments, people are going to get snapshots of that world. And we can't take our salvation for granted simply because we don't think it's working. That's a very silly statement. Because angels are fighting for people every moment, every single moment. They're fighting away things away from your life. And those things, Satan himself works a different way. And those spirits that have come into this realm, you have power over. But the ones you don't know about, the angels, are fighting away from you. You're very protected. Very protected. But so many people, they don't believe they're being protected. Right? And it's like a scenario, Anthony, if I saved your life 5 days ago, but you didn't know about it, you would never thank me, would you? You'd never thank me. Because I'd never know that
No, you're right. And many of us have had personal experiences where our lives have been saved through miraculous actions or circumstances, but you're describing miracles that happen outside, beyond our realm of awareness that are equally important.
That's right. That's right. And simply because we don't know it does not mean it. You know what? If God would withdraw his angels from a person's life, I could almost say that within a split second. All those demons, because see, once you're washed by the blood of the Lamb, every demon in that dimension, they're going to know who you are. Once you're seriously washed by the blood of the Lamb, they're going to know who you are. And if those angels were to ever not protect your blind sides, I believe that a person would just be simply taken over within seconds.
Yeah,
they would be
agree with you.
Gone within seconds.
And again, going to sort of the big picture approach, as I tend to do, we are oftentimes, you and I are faced by people who don't want to believe the things that we're talking about. They'll ask for, in order to say you're just speaking in terms of conjecture, you're making these things up, where you're connecting dots where they don't exist, and yet we can relate that to the spiritual as well. People seem to discount the existence of demons and spirits simply because they don't feel or don't think that they're able to physically interact and thereby gain proof of those entities. They think that we are somehow making all of this up and that we're crazy. And yet, we're not exclusive, but there are many people like you and I who have studied these things and who have personally experienced a lot of these things, not just the spiritual, but also we've looked at the hard physics of what is going on and why are they spending trillions of dollars on a huge machine like this. This isn't fantasy on their part. They're not just playing games or going through the motions or running experiments for the sake of, somehow bettering and furthering human existence through their developments in science. No, these are real issues. And when we talk about a portal opening, this is a real, factual issue.
Yes, it really is. And one of the bigger concerns is that it's about to happen. It's about to take place. No doubt physical changes will ensue. The earth right now is in a type of turmoil because of external influences upon the planet. And they're only going to amplify these effects by Earth-based experiments. A lot of people didn't believe that radiation could hurt you until people began to get sick from that New Mexico test. They thought it was impossible for people to get, lethal doses of radiation from something entire generations deformed and sick by the radiation. Now, we're having another experiment that we don't fully know the outcome to. And just like we discovered radiation is very dangerous, we'll likely discover that the after effects of these experiments can be very dangerous as well. Sure. And that's the unfortunate part, because this is something that people are going to have to painfully become aware of. You know, it's kind of like a kid touching a stove and they burn their hands. And they say, ooh, that's hot. That hurts really bad and I'll never do it again. Well, after they do their experiments, I would say sometime in November, December, that's when the gravity of the effects could take its toll. Now, something could happen that same day. Well, I'm sure something will happen that same day, but the after effects of that could take their toll. And then, you know, that would be just like one of the nuclear tests that took place. It really would be. Anthony, I'm going to take a break.
Their tagline that everybody seems to be familiar with from the New World Order is order out of chaos, and it's all over our money. So you've got to have the chaos. Paris has lit the fuse. I agree. Ferguson was a test, if you will, to see what would happen in terms of political sensitivity in this country. They knew that Paris had a larger population of the radical population. And they knew that they could light the fuse there, and it was descended upon by the media, as you accurately relayed to the group. I agree. It is going to roll over into this country very quickly. Their timing, I think, will correlate to CERN, and I think that what you and Michael and myself are doing is probably...
Damn that, guys. Sorry, Anthony.
Good.
You get knocked off the line.
Yeah, somebody doesn't like you. As I was saying real quickly, is we have CERN as our litmus test.
Everybody up, and then people will begin to do some bold things. And they're making alternative plans because they really are looking for some type of unfortunate maneuvers happening within the U.S. Now, it's not going to be a total loss, but it will certainly wake everybody up, and then people will begin to do some bold things. And well, in the end, go ahead.
I agree with you, Mike. There's two nations for sure. I can tell you now, Israel will have to defend its borders, but it has God said He'll build a wall around it, a wall of fire. Okay, there's no question they're going to have to, and they will. And I think you're right. The United States, the other nation, a nation founded on the Word of God, and even though there's great divisions in it, and it will cost us, we will take a hit because of it. I'm with you. There's an everlasting truth. There is too much of the gospel here that it will preserve the nation, ultimately, preserve the union because of the gospel here. And I can't help but to go back and look at George Washington's vision. He speaks of World War I and II. He speaks of the Great Civil War for sure. He speaks of World War II without question.
This happened in Egypt, and what they experienced, and what you and I, all of us, is going to experience in a much more sinister way than back then. Men forget the days of the destroyer. Only the wise know where it went and when it will return on its appointed hour. It raged across the heavens in the days of wrath. And this was its likeness. It was a billowing cloud of smoke enwrapped in a ruddy glow, not distinguishable in joint or limb. Its mouth was an abyss from which came flame, smoke, and hot cinders. When ages pass, certain laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change, their movements and restlessness. They are no longer constant, and a great light appears redly in the sky. When blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up, and belch forth fire and ashes.
On those earthquakes in Texas felt in and around Dallas. Well, tonight, word of yet another one. Now, 11 earthquakes in just the last 24 hours. And, of course, the new concern over what's causing this. ABC's Clayton Sandell tonight.
When you think earthquakes,
Yep, we're having an earthquake.
You think California, Japan, maybe Mexico, but Texas?
Did we just have an earthquake? Yes, ma'am, I believe we did.
In the last 24 hours, nearly a dozen small quakes clustered near the town of Irving, leaving Texas-sized cracks.
It's just like a line just coming through. It's just like it just separated my house.
Rattling the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area.
I want to know what's the cause of it, what's going on.
At the National Earthquake Information Center in Golden, Colorado, they're not ruling anything out. Quake experts say the temblors could be a rare, natural fluke, but they also say huge amounts of wastewater, a byproduct of oil and gas exploration pumped deep underground, just might be the trigger. That's what scientists believe is happening in the oil and gas boom towns of Oklahoma, now the most active earthquake state in the country. A 4.0 shaker there just today.
Could this be the start of something bigger? The more small earthquakes you have, the more likely it is that you could have a larger damaging quake.
Yeah, you could. That's one word for it. Hey, Anthony, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Dallas, Texas has been having a series of earthquakes, and I'm sure that everybody else is aware of this. What they may not be aware of is we all know that CERN is attempting something that's never been done with a device like that, with the 13 TV they're trying to reach. Beam collision has never been achieved, but no one understands or knows there's another collider in Texas. Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
I would advise people to get some humidifiers. A cheap humidifier would be a very good thing to have, because if it gets hot past or where near zero humidity, it's going to be very difficult to breathe. Very difficult to breathe for a lot of people when they have asthmatic conditions and so forth. So, and the temperatures are going to fluctuate. We could actually see snow in the middle of July, followed by a heat wave, of 110 degrees. We're looking at weather phenomena just like that happening, extremes and cold and hot.
Climate chaos, 500 days to climate chaos. That's sometime this September, I believe, and it's coming close to the beast again, and also the fourth blood moon. There's just a lot going on that I think is going to affect it. Mike, as always, great to have you on the broadcast.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
January 20th, 2015. What officials are calling an apocalyptic freak storm left the United Arab Emirates desert white under a blanket of hail. A deadly hailstorm ravaged a Middle Eastern nation, causing infrastructure collapse, nearly 1,000 road smashes, and several dead as a result.
Okay, this is Chapter 3, The Destroyer, Part 1, from the Great Scroll, back in the days of the Exodus.
And he speaks about another war, an end-time war, that certainly affects America. But again, the Republic will stand. I think we'll take a hit because we have allowed a lot of idolatry. We have let some wickedness in the culture take a foothold. The Illuminati, the spirit of that Illuminati has certainly been prevalent, but there's something about the fact that the blood of Jesus Christ, there's a remnant here that is so loyal and so strong. I think ultimately it will in the end, but it's going to get very, very. This is going to be a year to really very prophetic year. Something very prophetic going to happen.
Most certainly. I know that I'll be devoting quite a bit of time to weather phenomena.
Picture taken from the International Space Station. It shows Cyclone Bansi and lightning in the eye of the storm. An Italian astronaut captured the pictures. She also got this one from a little bit farther away. But man, that is just a beautiful thing to see. Frightening at the same time, but no doubt compelling.
Quite a bit of time to weather phenomena because I know that they're not going to warn people for certain weather events.